Welcome back, trainers. So you may have heard Lucario does have Aura Sphere in the game. So what does this mean for Pokemon Go and fighting types? Does it mean that Machamps are now irrelevant? Does it mean that we cannot really look forward or don't really care too much about the Conkeldurr release in the future? Not necessarily. We're going to be going over everything you need to know. So if you're new, make sure you subscribe so you can stay up to date, and make sure you hit that like button, and let's go ahead and get into this, because Lucario with Aura Sphere is an amazing Pokemon, but I do have a bit of information as well as a few tips that I'm going to be giving you regarding the other fighting types. So taking a look at Lucario initially here, it is going to be a dual type of fighting and steel. Max CP 2703, attack 237, defense 144, and stamina 172. It's going to be weak to fighting, fire, and ground, resisting because of that beautiful steel as well as that fighting dual type. Bug, poison, rock, dark, dragon, grass, ice, normal, and steel. Quick moves are going to be bullet punch and counter. More than likely, you're always going to want to be going with counter, of course. And then the charge moves are going to be the newly added Aura Sphere. Close combat, which has a new added touch for PvP, which we're going to be going over as well. Flash cannon, so you're going to be able to be a complete steel type attacker if you so choose to. Shadow Ball, amazing coverage. And then power up punch, very good for burning shields for the leaders, and good for PvP. Now there's a lot of questions. What movesets do I really want? We're going to be going into that here in just a moment. So before we do, I want to show you a little comparison with the other fighting types as well as the future Conkeldurr, which will be released. We were all anticipating this, but now it's just, Lucario, right? So taking a look at the attack for Lucario, 237. And then you have Conkeldurr at 243, and then Machamp with 236. So Lucario is going to have 2 points more than Machamp. But when it comes down to these other two fighters, including Machamp, right, they're going to be lasting longer, a lot longer. Lucario, I wouldn't say is necessarily squishy, but it does not have as much stamina or defense as the other two. So those have something going for it. At least they're going to have a longer TDO. As far as their moves, well, Conkeldurr is going to have, I wouldn't say the best fighting type move now. It will have counter dynamic punch, just like Machamp did. So don't worry, your Machamps are safe, okay, guys? I know we've invested a lot of Stardust into those, as well as TMs trying to get those moves. But at the end of the day, Lucario is simply going to be better. Now, if we take a look at Pvpoke, link in the description, of course. Go ahead and look at the Great League. We looked at fighting types to see where they're going to be ranking, and I was really surprised at what I found here. So Lucario, they're calling for counter, of course, really depends, and bullet punch a bit. Close combat, because of what happened to it. It's going to be charging up a lot faster, but it's going to sharply lower your defense. And then they're calling for power up punch. Shadow Ball is always a good option. Aura Sphere is at the bottom with 0, because this is PvP. Now, of course, going up against PvE, gyms and raids, especially raids, you're definitely going to want to be going with Aura Sphere, and that is going to be your #1 pick, counter and Aura Sphere. But as far as PvP goes, in the Great League, it's not really looking like Aura Sphere is going to be much use to you. I'm sure you can find usability, but, I don't think you're really going to want to go with it. So we're going to go ahead and look at the Ultra League here. It is going to be around the same rank, and it is not calling for Aura Sphere whatsoever yet again. And let me put a disclaimer. This is subject to the specific typings allowed in whatever Silph Arena League you're playing in. But, if you don't do that, you may want to go with Power Up Punch and Shadow Ball. That's just my personal pick, all right? Because if you're stuck against something that's not very weak to fighting, you're going to be able to hit it with Shadow Ball, right? And not just be walled. Now, taking a look at close combat, this attack now charges up quicker in trainer battles, but sharply decreases your own Pokemon's defense after you use it. So close combat may be looking nice and spicy for you to pick. And then you have, of course, Machamp with his legacy move, Cross Chop. Now, this is not something you want to use in, raids or gyms, but definitely in PvP, you're going to want Cross Chop over Dynamic Punch, okay, for your Machamps. So Machamp, it's looking a little bit better than Lucario in some circumstances. Now, taking a look at the DPS here, we have Lucario at the top. This is going to be regarding just fighters. Counter and Aura Sphere sitting at 18.6 DPS and a TDO of 384. Then you have Conkeldurr in the future. Counter Dynamic Punch sitting at 16.8 and a TDO of 501. So it's going to be lasting a lot longer than Lucario, that is for sure. They have Riolu, of course. We've been over how it's better than Machamp regarding DPS. And then you have Machamp itself, the king, or the former king at least, counter dynamic punch, sitting at a DPS of 16.2 and a TDO of 434. So it looks like Conkeldurr is going to be solid, rock solid when it does come out. As far as Lucario currently, I did test it. We're going to look at me going up against raids at the end here and my thoughts. It performed well. I am not in any way, shape, or form trying to downplay it. It's rare. It's hard to accumulate candies, hatch them, and as simple as that, right? You have to get a good one if you're going to be investing in this thing because it's so rare. So as it is right now, your Machamps are still fantastic. I know how it goes. I have two full teams of Machamps, and you're like, well, why did you do that? That was for a Dialga raid back in the day, and it's just nice having these as well as going up against that Cobalion. Machamps have been solid. They've been good to us, and I'm not going to throw it to the curve. It still has a place in my heart because I absolutely love Machamp in this game. It works great. Now, taking a look at the top fighters going up against an Arceus. Arceus is going to be a normal type. We do not know how this is going to be released, but just for fun here, looking at Lucario with counter and Aura Sphere, it is going to take 33 of those. And then Machamp, it is going to take quite a bit more. All right. So the time to win for the Lucario is going to be in the mid 700s. And then for the Machamp, it's going to be at the high 800s. So yeah, Lucario is obviously going to be better, but there's one thing to keep in mind. That is going to have a Mega in the future, folks. That's going to absolutely put it on another level, surpassing Machamp, surpassing Conkeldurr. There's not going to be any questions about how long it can last, but we're not exactly sure how it is going to be introduced. And one more time to be 100% clear, if you are looking to use this in PvE, going up against gyms and raids, what moveset do you want? That is going to be counter and Aura Sphere. Now, one more little tip here. When you do have your Riolu, make sure you purchase that secondary move if that's something you're interested in, because if you do evolve it and do not have that secondary move purchase, it is going to be extremely expensive as opposed to purchasing it as a Riolu. Now, if you're going to go into PvP, what movesets do you want? More than likely, you're going to want counter and then possibly power up punch. And now this is where it gets tricky. Definitely counter and possibly power up punch and maybe even Shadow Wall. Close combat has now that extremely fast charge up, but then it's going to decrease your defense. But if you do switch, you will be able to relieve it. Now, it's very iffy. Aura Sphere seems like it's a no-go as far as PvP is concerned. But, as far as PvE, Aura Sphere is going to be number one. Now, if you have any more questions regarding Lucario and Aura Sphere, please leave them in the comments below, and I will try to get around to answering those in future videos. Hopefully this video helped you out quite a bit. If it did, please give it a big thumbs up. Always helps me out. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at the rest of these raids here. Now at this point, all we need is the shiny Riolu. Pretty sure we're going to have some sort of hatchathon introducing that in the future. Thank you for watching, trainers, and I'll be catching you all next time. Take care.